I have a lot of projects on the go at the same time that people don't necessarily see or know about. Probably the public only sees maybe 10%. I live between Berlin and Bangkok. Sometimes I'm in London. So I'm in the process of organising my studio. I've found loads of unfinished projects. I found a photocopier once and I played around with moving these media images so that you'd get this kind of warped effect. I made a few works from those photocopies, just much bigger paintings. So that was at Artist Run Gallery for Thailand Biennale. The starting point of a lot of my work is often something that's come from online or from mass media. Icons or pictures of, you know, these celebrities and famous athletes are always so loaded and so political. People are never neutral to them. People on the internet take those images that they have these strong reactions to and they make them into memes. I find that really interesting because they're doing the same thing that I'm doing, remixing these iconic pictures. So that's something that I never finished, the ink blots. That was a way to kind of take myself out of these conditions where I'd always keep drawing in the same way, in the same angle or the same style, just by making some sort of little accidents and then sort of folding pages, just to see what would come out of that. I have a series that I made when there was a partial solar eclipse happening, kind of like a painted collage. But I remember when I was making them, I could see the light from my studio just kind of casting these really weird long shadows. And I decided that I wanted to pick a pigment that was a bit like the moon. I think the timing of making work also influences you. When I was making the comic book, I think the reason I never finished it is it's quite a loaded and quite an emotional and personal project. I started it after our mother passed away, or was about to pass away. So it was already quite dark and quite intense. Like you can see there's a lot of black and whites, ink washes. I also had another death of someone close to me a couple of years after that. So going through two deaths of people who are quite close to you, I think it's a process. Maybe it never goes away. And I think that's why that project also needs time. I briefly thought about how to present it in a book. So I made just little sketches, little models of how it could look. So one of them was a leporello. You have a very long piece of paper and you just fold them into an accordion. You could show the whole thing as a print on a wall, or you could just have it on a table, for example, and you could see both sides. When I take that project back out and I really look at all the sketches and drawings, they're so raw. And they kind of remind me of those sort of drawings I made when I was younger, when I was a teenager, because they're so brutally honest. I think I counted once and I grew up in about 17 countries or more. By the time I was 7, we'd already moved to 10 countries. That kind of chaotic effect does show up in my work a lot. It's definitely reflected in my studio, unfortunately, because I have a kind of habit, which I think was probably a coping mechanism from when I was a kid, because we'd move every 6 months to 2 to 3 years maximum. I would just have my suitcase on the floor and it would just be open with my clothes and a toothbrush and maybe a couple books, and I'd never unpack things because I just thought there was no point. There's a psychological element to why it's so difficult to understand how to keep a studio organised. But the things you keep are sentimental. I have a couple books from my childhood. This one that is full of fantasy creatures and vampires and all sorts of weird things which children kind of get obsessed with. That is a book about drawing in the traditional Thai way, which was quite common to paint on temple walls, and I grew up seeing these. I was obsessed with the Hanuman figure. They're usually showing Hanuman and the monkey army, and you can always see these epic battles on the Thai temple walls. So I bought this book when I was older. It's not necessarily that I would draw in the Thai traditional way, but I think it's a direct link to that feeling that I had as a child. Every emotion's so raw and so intense and unfiltered. And I think that's what I and most artists are always trying to get back to. I do keep a few old sketchbooks from when I was a teenager, and I have one. I was living in Paris, and I was really rediscovering a lot of artists that I loved from my childhood, so mostly Picasso. There's an element of nostalgia, but I kind of keep it like the way athletes keep their lucky socks. And I sort of keep that first sketchbook when I was in Paris as good luck in a way, because I think that was the point where I really started thinking about becoming a professional artist. Sketchbooks are so honest, and it just shows you a really unfiltered view of the artist because you're not so precious about it. I always try to tone down how many projects I have at the same time, but I think it's a difficult thing to do as a creative person. You have something that you've been interested in for years, but you've sort of placed it in the back of your mind and it's always there.